Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
So when I was younger, I always thought that song was like, "Hold me closer, Tony Danza," right? Like I always thought it was Tony Danza. It just makes more sense that way, like, because it's like, then you could like, "Tell me softly, who's the boss?" No?
Well,
That's how I
he
felt.
wasn't the boss, so there's that.
That's
You
kind of the
control Bobbett
thing.
on that.
No, because he has to whisper in your ear that you're the boss. You're the boss, Amelia.
I don't think that
Milano.
the original song had nearly that much range, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Time will tell. So what? Like, I forget how many years ago I made this meme, but it's come true. And tonight's the debate, and we're gonna find out how to make. We're gonna be. Let her cook, bro. Let her cook. It's gonna be okay. What do you guys think? I mean, this is pre-debate synchro predictions. I think to an extent. And also just like what we've been thinking about. Like, you'd also look at like analysis, like think about the numbers of the teams.
Well, I actually was talking to a friend earlier today, and I kind of made this statement that I think is true, at least to myself. But the peak of any debate whatsoever was probably Trump dressing down every other person at the RNC in 2016. I don't think we'll ever have anything nearly as entertaining, or even if it were all scripted, it was still raw as hell. Like, it was all the things that everyone, the memes where it's like, oh, he's saying the things that people wanted to say. I feel like that cherry kind of got like broken a little bit, and now whatever he's got lined up, it's unacceptable now. Like, what he did to his fellow compatriots, the RNC, he could only have gotten away with that because they were all like inside jobs, right? Like every single one of those.
It was like blowing down a house of cards. But all he needed to do was just like tap on them, and they would just shatter.
But it was, as far as an experience, like me going through the human experience and experiencing whatever this reality has to offer, that was like one of the peak moments, knowing that other people were seeing this too. It wasn't just like some crazy AI thing that I made for my own enjoyment. It kind of feels like it was. It was such a surreal moment that everyone got to take part in. And I'm almost, that's like my bar, right? So every other debate ever is always never going to measure up to that. I hope it does. That my prediction is that it won't measure up to whatever Trump did at the RNC in 2016. So
it's going to take like 10 or 20 years for society to catch up with that moment. But
the other one to throw out there was Stephen Colbert when he did the press talk. I can't remember what the hell the name is, when they invite all the press people to like roast the politicians.
The dinner, yeah.
Every time, even whatever your thoughts are on Colbert as a person, like his whole little shtick, but like whenever that comes on, and I'm like, I'll just watch 20 seconds of it. It's like an hour later, and I'm like watching the entire thing to the end. It was done really well, in my opinion.
You're not a cup half empty guy. You're a cup half full guy. Maybe a quarter full, maybe an eighth. Maybe there's a little water in there. I wouldn't drink it.
Hey, Thomas, I was just thinking of Stephen Colbert like seconds before you brought him up, because So like on my Twitter wall right now, you'll see I have an old video of Stephen Colbert talking to Obama, where Obama speaks to the possibility of him being behind the scenes for, presidents following him to kind of like direct things. And I'm just putting out there, like, is that going to happen here with Kennedy? Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, is he going to now? Because now, before he couldn't, because like, what is the conversation behind the scenes? Because I could totally see Kennedy being like, look, I would have destroyed both of you. Like, here's, not just like what to say, but even like, how to say it, like in terms of like, because before Trump couldn't have gone off about clear choice. Now, if he wanted to, Trump could go off about clear choice, the DNC super $1 billion super PAC that went after Kennedy. So he could be like, there's a whole other angle there. I don't know if he'll take that approach, but like if he wanted to have that kind of effect,
he should. I wish to God he would do the bigger tent thing, because it's like looking at how they're like. I mean, this is what's blowing my mind right now with all these Austrian economics majors in 1930s Democrats that are like stoked that they have Dick Cheney under their tent pole. It's a weird feeling. I was like, what's up with Mark Hamill and Stephen King? We're so excited to be voting alongside Dick Cheney, and it's just insane. Like, how do you get here? How do we get here? Because this
isn't left versus right. People think this is left versus right. The proof that this isn't left versus right is that we've had 3 elections now where we've had great candidates come from the left but get sabotaged by the DNC. The DNC is like neocon as far as I can tell. Like, they're the wealthier party. They have all this, not just money, but the resources that they have available for going after opponents is like Russia level. You know what I mean?
What were some of the good candidates? And please don't say Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders did have a charisma.
Sanders won the primaries. He won them twice. Yeah. And you had delegates standing behind when the announcements said that Hillary won state by state, saying Bernie won this state.
He was kind of an anti-hero in a weird way, because he's like, look, this guy is a self-centered, lazy.
Well, let's call him a great candidate only in the sense that
that's what I'm saying.
Have won. He would have won if they put into Bernie what they're putting behind Kamala.
Think of it like wrestling, Thomas. You got to think of it like wrestling. Like, he's like a really good wrestling character, because he's like a Larry David who's just trying to look out for himself, who wants to work as little as possible and wants to use as much of the system as possible.
You already mentioned the movie nails that the Free Lunch Express. It absolutely nails the whole shtick.
I think there's charisma to that, because a lot of people at that time were recently educated, upper middle class white kids, right? And so there's something about that generation that really sympathized with whatever opportunities made it possible for Bernie Sanders to exist. And like, we want to perpetuate this champagne socialism economy, right? I think that's a real thing that existed. They're like, we don't really want the like, this is something you learn in art class, that the socialists were anti-bourgeoisie. They didn't really like the elite art style, and they got really proletariat. Well, we could just keep some color to cultural Marxism, right? I think that's what Bernie Sanders represented.
Bernie just spoke at the Democratic National Convention talking about how we're going to go after the billionaires. And as far as I believe, the very next speech after him was from a billionaire. Like, there's no, like, they are the billionaire. They are the party of billionaires now. They got every single Fortune 100 person backing Kamala, not one backing Trump. Like, it's
that's why. So like, Bernie's never been like a great candidate in the sense that you're thinking, and I hear your point. Like, he's the greatest candidate in the wrestling sense, but a great candidate, you could say like Ron Paul. Ron Paul was a pretty great candidate. But also, Ron Paul was a constitutionalist, which meant that he had no capacity to function in the international stage that had been created in the 1970s.
Well, if I could rephrase that, I would say the winning candidate. The candidate has the biggest shot of winning, but they don't want them because they don't speak to what the corporate capture that they're trying to maintain. They can't have that. So, and I believe that the DNC they would rather have Trump than have Kennedy. And now they're screwed, because the whole time Kennedy was taking more votes from Trump the whole time. And when I would go table at the farmers market, he's trying to get Trump elected. And I say, actually, he takes more votes. from Trump, but that did not stop the DNC from relentlessly attacking him in court, state by state, double to triple the signatures for every state. It didn't matter. They would attack him and lose, but they were wasting his time and money, and they just keep at that until this culminated in the residency issue, which stands to have his name removed from every single ballot across the country because he put New York residency on every application. And so that's the move with Trump, is because he's like, hey, I'm about to be, very potentially, like if he loses the Court of Appeals, he's off of every ballot. So it's just like, well, what the hell are we doing? So, there wasn't time to waste with that either, of what which direction he was going to go.
I think he knows that for that to happen, then they lose all of they kind of renege their own powers, because the powers he's using are the powers that they have. So if they say that he doesn't have, it's really hard to differentiate that in a way that didn't screw them as well.
The literal powers that be, like the real ones.
Yeah. Plus, there's that whole thing. I mean, like, I know this is kind of a horse that's been beaten. No, it's like a dead animal that Tom Green is making love to in the road. But what is your thoughts on the Marxist economist father of Kamala? I'm just gonna go with Kamala. It's fun.
Which way do we need to say it as four white guys? Is there like a right way to say the name?
Donald
Harris.
J. Harris.
I know how to say it, but I've heard it so many ways it confuses me. It's
I'm pretty sure it's not Kamala, but maybe it is.
No, it's because you got Joe and then you got Kamala. See how that works?
It's the only way to do it.
Joe,
Okay, now I can't. Now I can't
Kamala.
undo that. Damn you! That's gonna be stuck forever.
It's the problem. That's what's happened to us for years. Like, so Joe Kamala. Oh man, but I don't know. I mean, the Marxist thing is just like only a joke until it's real. And every time she talks, everyone says, to me, what it is she sounds like she's lying to a cop. Like, she's got that weird laugh that she's like trying to hide that she's got like meth in a body in the back of her trunk or something like that. Like, she's at very least lying to her to old people. She's got this code switch where she knows she's talking to people that she wants to not understand her.
What do you mean you like Tupac? Who is that?
It's just, yeah, it just seems weird. I don't know. Like, you can't at all trust what she's saying, but that's.
I don't like the communist accusation. A lot of the time over the years, it hasn't made as much sense to me as it's making right now, because for a few reasons. A, the price capping thing, which even MSNBC is like, that's a ridiculous idea, because the problem is the manufacturers. Like, Nestle's making record profits, not your small businesses who are having to cover overhead for products that they're selling. And so there's that issue. And then there's also the issue of, Democrats themselves would say that, Putin winning by 80% of the vote. Why was that? Well, they silenced all other opponents and they suppressed all other opposition. And then it's like, well, that's literally what the Democrats are doing. So what is the greater threat? Russia interfering with our elections, our party literally imitating Russia's techniques? Like, I'm not really sure.
Do the Gimel thing.
Gimel? Because, well, Gimel is where we get the word camel. So the Hebrew letter Gimel is actually C, right? It's like it goes Aleph, Beit, Gimel.
Is it supposed to look like a camel?
It's supposed to look like a flaccid phallus, obviously. I mean,
but what's the diamond there for? You wouldn't want your flaccid.
It's not really it's a diamond here in this font, I guess. It's not necessarily always looking like a diamond per se.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I mean, it might be a silly question, but like, is there like a hieroglyphic aspect to any of the characters?
Well, yeah, because from the Phoenician and Chaldean roots, they were pictographs, and so they're incorporated into the letters. So it's
like a delta kind of thing, yeah.
So when you see like the Tetragrammaton and you can stack it up and it looks like a human body, am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Is that a side effect of being based in Phoenician, or is that something that was retrofitted on top of it after the fact?
That's in the design of the letters themselves, and you have this kind of, it's similar to the idea of the logos, that you have this baseline from which everything extends. It's kind of like if you look at like where you got was popularized as like the flower of life or the seed of life, in the way that you can extrapolate all the Platonic solids from that single figure. That's like what makes a geometry sacred, is the ability to extrapolate other things from it. So I think you could argue that everything kind of extends through Tetragrammaton. Literally the flame. Hebrew alphabet is referred to as a flame alphabet because the yud is in every single letter, which is a flame. But yeah.
There's a good
I've got a yud, like me,
David.
Right. Well, what's interesting about the camel in relationship to Kamala, if you're going to go there, just like objectively, like, that
Not
corresponds
just
to
her
the high
face, right?
priestess. It's the high priestess. So you have this feminine aspect, but is it a qliphothic reflection that only approximates that aspect of divinity? Is like because in demonology they reflect or they replicate, but it's like a funhouse mirror where it actually isn't the thing in itself,
How can anyone be against AI when it gives us things like
I know,
Kamala
right?
cooking cats and petting camels and
Well,
Great.
being against AI is kind of like being against Burning Man. It's like this is so many things all at once. You take a position, it feels so real. You know what I mean? Like it's like, it's everything. What do you got?
it's
Mixed
also
bag.
a little bit like being against the debate or being against the meteor.
Lex Harris
Right.
had a cute sync today, which we already kind of know, but it's nice hearing him sync. I'm gonna try to do it. I just learned that Kamala Harris's dad's name is Donald J. Harris, and it's messing with my head.
Yeah.
Donald J. Trump, Donald J. Harris. The universe is trolling us. I know it's not quite Lex, but that's how.
Oh, that's Lex Fridman
That's
doing
how
that?
That's how he feels, bro.
Crazy.
That's how he feels.
They'll do the gematria then on Trump or Harris and
Yeah, get to
73 and
Oh God.
Donald Jasper Harris did get around though. I just reading his life or education where went from University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana to Northwestern University to University of Wisconsin-Madison, which rings my CIA bells, and then moves to Stanford, and then Yale, and it's like, wow, damn, this guy was
right during Weather Underground. So that's the time when they're studying Marxism, and then they're trying to figure out why these kids who are anti-establishment or anti-military in Vietnam, they're at first in the East Coast, they just assume these guys are all Marxists, but then they get messaged back like these kids don't know Marxism from Monopoly, bro. Like they don't understand. These are just kids in these schools, and we know more about Marxism than they do, and we might have accidentally taught them more about Marxism than they've ever known, because of our just having conversations with them and trying to be at these events. And they're like, okay, keep up with that. Let's control Marxism in the university circuit. And you have to think socialism in general, the neoconservatives, right? Trotsky roots, neoconservative. The neoconservatives are really, you've got like Stalinites and Trotskyites that make up the neoconservatives and the neoliberals. That's basically the way to look at it. So you've got a socialist, anti-statists in a lot of ways. Trotskyites were anti-statist. So they were trying to create Soviet collectives. And in a lot of ways, you can imagine corporations and corporatism being similar to this, except that it's more Marxist because people that are laborers will have ownership of whatever Soviets that are created. But that's essentially what Republicans have become. The neoconservatives are Trotskyites trying to create international banana republics that police themselves, right?
See,
and the
I don't get
neoliberals are
this,
states. No?
I don't get this though, because I don't see, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see where the solution is actually like legit communicated from Karl Marx. Like, isn't he like if you look at his whole analysis, isn't it mainly just showing what the problem is and still asking the question if we suppose the proletariat is to get what the bourgeoisie gets, what's to stop the proletariat from just becoming just like the bourgeoisie? Right. Like, this is an unreconcilable issue. And I feel like this is kind of like Zizek's criticism of Marxism on its own and why he combines it with, Hegel and all these other ideas, because if you're just going to, like, that's why when Jordan Peterson went to debate him, he kind of like crashed his, like, he wasn't looking to have a debate on anything other than Marxism on its own terms. Like, I don't actually see Marxism on its own terms in any of this necessarily, like, because
it's either nothing or everything, right? Because Marxism is something. So Marx never said that. And also the Soviet Union, this is one of those jokes like communism has never been tried. The Soviet Union never claimed to have achieved communism, right? Like that was a goal that they were working towards, allegedly. But even Marx said, someday this is going to happen or not, depending on the sustaining of civilization. So civilization will get to a point where it might collapse or not. And maybe somewhere, maybe in America, he predicted America, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the 20th or maybe in the middle or the late 21st century, that we'll get to a point where so many industries and innovations that we've had have been, some have floated and some have sunk. And we keep the ones that work and we sustain those things indefinitely. So we can think of roads, right? We used to have different kinds of roads. We have different ideas for how roads should be. Now we have a uniformity and an expectation, and we want roads to have permanency. And that's the same with lighthouses. Lighthouses were first, then we have roads. Soon we'll have even more things like the internet. The internet is building a sustainable infrastructure that has some permanency, right? And so Marx talked about how you needed to have automation, and because of automation, he saw automation as this new thing that was going to be like, wow, the machines will just keep running.
Not dissimilar from Arthur C. Clarke, actually. Yeah.
Right. And so if people want those machines to run and make sure that those machines keep running, that will be the limit for how long those things can run for.
Ooh, that's interesting. I never really considered the idea that seizing the means of production as that would apply to things like AI and automation. Ooh, that puts an interesting twist on Andrew Yang's kind of ideas around Marxism, right? Oh shit!
Because all of a sudden labor becomes something very different, and you can look at everything you do differently because you're no longer trying to impress people or sell a thing. You're really just trying to record things that can be automated or learned from. Even if they're not doing the exact thing, they're learning from the data in the future that can be used for all sorts of things. And so what we're doing is we're participating towards what we want to have sustained in the future. What's the point of running the world if you can't do it sustainably? So some things will go away because of that, right? Like I've thought, and I said this like 10 years ago, like the new Razor phone will get dull. You're going to stop getting this sharp razor that becomes dull. It's not going to be that ideology anymore. It's going to be like, I need a phone for 10 years. Maybe I need to switch out the battery. Maybe I need to switch out the screen. But things I don't think we're going to get the same innovation and the rapidity of innovation, because that's something that comes with the chaos of free market capitalism. But that's not something that is, the growth is not sustainable all the time. So you have to have times where you deal with that or it becomes cancerous.
Well, I see this almost like as volleying the ball back and forth between private and public industry, or more specifically, like between government and the rest of the public. Like AI being a good example, and this might be conspiratorial, so don't sue me, but that the government keeps it in secret until they can develop it up to a certain point, and it kind of plateaus, and it's already sort of saturated, and they've gotten every last bit they can get out of it, and then it either gets old enough that can get released, or someone leaks it, or that just private and public just in general catches up to it, and then they release their own version. But then when that happens, the reason is usually because the government or the military, they hit some kind of theoretical limit of the technology itself. It doesn't run fast enough, or it's not small enough, or it's not efficient enough. And then it's like, okay, we'll lead this like bumpkin version out to the public. And then the public, they have to work within limitations that the government doesn't. They kind of have an endless checkbook and endless resources. They can do whatever the hell they want. And as soon as they don't care enough, they release it out to us. Like if there's an open source issue, well, now you've got people that are trying to milk every bit they can out of like a Raspberry Pi or whatever, right? They're trying to get it to run on consumer grade hardware. And in doing so, they figure out all kinds of cool, clever new things that the government never would have expected to try out. Like, for example, the quantization of AI models, right? That's sort of a fairly recent development where they're like, oh, we can just round a bunch of numbers and keep getting these great results. Oh my God, this thing that used to be 80 gigs is now 4 gigs, or whatever the different analogy is on that. But that only happens when you're forced to innovate inside these limitations, which government doesn't have. So it's a volley in that the government hits some kind of theoretical limitation and they pass it off either open source or private or whatever, and then they're forced to do some kind of real innovation with it. And then the government's like, oh, damn, we didn't realize you could do that with it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the drawing board, implement what someone else has sort of innovated, and then hit the next theoretical limit. And it just keeps going back and forth over and over indefinitely.
Yeah,
I
you
think
nailed
for
it.
the most part that's true. I mean, you look at CTC, IBM, and what they were doing in the Soviet Union and the computers that they were building, the infrastructure for census and everything like that. But also just this technology in the hands of the government, it's also something that's highly I mean, they have far larger server systems, and they do have things like this. Like they do have LoRa's probably 20 years earlier with
Well,
just
well,
data centers and RAID
like
systems.
you've seen Kamala speak to like Bitcoin before, where she's referring to like how this could be easier to use for criminals and all these kind of things. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, isn't putting the budget on blockchain one of the best ways to get the public
Track
involved
it.
in government spending for accountability, for purpose of accountability? Her rejecting it like that, it sounds to me like it's like, that this could be used in a good way, right?
Everything they say,
Yeah.
you have to just take the opposite. It's like literally the opposite. If she says it could be used for criminals, it's like no criminals are using it at
But I
all.
also don't think the government does all these things on their own. Like most of
They
it's
are,
government
some of them.
most of
Everyone.
government's government contracted, right? So the government is contracting corporations, universities. They're building up these places. They even have overseas offshore connected accounts so they can pay like paramilitary groups and mad scientist islands. I think that AI is probably advanced through these and all this technology advanced through the corporations that like Lockheed and all these things that the government's built, government contracted corporations, but not the government itself. And that's the difference between Trotskyism and Stalinism. And I think that's a bigger thing here because we're saying, okay, like Kamala is a Marxist, and I think everyone's a Marxist because you have to think, what did Bannon say? Bannon said he was a Trump Leninist. If you look at, and I've said this many times, that Trump's policies were very Leninist policies, Leninite policies. He was even in some ways like Stalin in that he had essential workers and he had essential businesses and he had corporations like McDonald's that he had running even during the quarantine because he said that this needed to be running. They turned the United States into a Leninist economy, right? Where it was controlled by a dictator, but also made up of Soviets, which would be represented by the corporations, which had investments by the United States and also their largest generational investors, Venrock and BlackRock and Vanguard, right? So we really, it's weird to me when people call a kettle black,
Right.
when a pot calls a kettle black, because it just seems like they're both socialist. It's just they're both Marxist even, and everyone, if you really think about it, kind of agrees with this idea that automation, they're like, oh wait, we don't have to be the workers for Marxism. Half of that will be on like machines that run all the time.
Right, but
Okay.
isn't the problem just like largely one of allocation? Because like that's why I didn't have so much of a beef with Bernie's brand of socialism. Because like I look at it and I'm like, dude, how is the military-industrial complex not socialist by every definition? Like I didn't like. But then you're like, oh well, what about the mail? Like, is that bad? Like, do we want a different mail system? Like I don't know. Like what do you think of that?
I
Like,
definitely
don't
want
know.
a different mail system.
Yeah.
No offense to no offense, like,
Well,
but
would it
like,
be
a
better
lot of
if it
people
wasn't
complain
a-
about a lot of like government agencies, but let me
Yeah.
just go off on why I'd rather use DHL or FedEx. No, I'm okay.
Tell-
But
Oh
tell
yeah,
my
me.
god, DHL,
I'm
you
interested.
monster! I'm out of here.
I don't
No,
agree
no,
with
no, no.
that.
I'm not even taking that position.
I would
I'm just
rather
kind of,
I would
like,
rather have
throwing
my
out
mail
some
delivered.
theoreticals.
I
Fire
would rather have my
department.
mail put in the pocket of a corpse in a hearse and delivered to me
Yeah,
than
okay.
use federal
No.
postmen.
I'm not taking that side. I'm more like playing devil's advocate here a little bit. Although I think I may take the side as far as the fire department goes, because wasn't it true that before the fire department became a socialist deal, that rich neighborhoods were like getting burnt down because fires would spread from the places that weren't covered to places that were
Well,
like.
that's George Bernard Shaw's thing. I don't know. I think really it's more that the firemen were gangs at that time, and so that's another, like, people don't really think about how much fire departments were group, like in New York, right? Like they would put buckets over the water hydrants so that because there's the municipal New York fire department, and there was the local the city fire department, and and there's like 4 fire departments, and then they were just gangs that would compete, and then if someone got there first, they would have somebody put a bucket over there to stop that fire department from being able to put out the fire until their gang got there. So all these fires were spreading because they wanted to be the ones to do it. I don't know. You can't trust the state, but it's hard to trust independent vigilante groups either.
Did they get
right?
paid for putting a fire out, or was it just an ego thing?
I think it's a
They
bit of
got-
both.
I believe in the past it was that they got paid
Yeah,
putting
I mean,
fires out, and then they would put the fires out in the wealthier neighborhoods and like be like, oh well, the other ones, but fires spread. So they're like, oh shoot, if we don't cover it here, it could affect us
well,
too.
that's the thing from George Bernard Shaw's Intelligent Woman's Guide to Socialism, right? You can avoid the rich can avoid the plague until the poor get the plague, and then everybody gets the plague, right? And like the rich should be, the richest children will avoid getting falling in potholes until they go play with the poor kids in their areas that have potholes, right?
This is what, dude, I'm so naive. Like in 2020, during 2 weeks to flatten your face, I really thought that we could reach, because this is something that affects everybody, that it could be like the end of Metropolis, where it's like, how the elite son is down below, and then he's like, oh, like we're all connected. But instead it just meant that everyone was afraid of their neighbors. And like I was like, oh, because in the past, like with like the 89 earthquake examples, what I saw was like, oh, a disaster, oh, people are coming together. But this was like, ooh, interesting tweak on that, because now everyone's freaking terrified of everybody. So I don't know. Muted.
They should be. The gorilla must move amongst the people as a fish swims in the sea. I don't know. Alex, you got a thought?
I have a dog barking in my face here, so no.
Oh, okay. You got that. Your face looked like you were reacting to something.
I thought my dog was going to be showing up on the.
I just want to say to Americans, like, if you think you are a libertarian or an anarchist, or you think you're not, basically, if you think you're not a Marxist, you should go like drive in a place that doesn't have any roads.
Go to China.
Just go to because China, yeah, you would actually do that afterwards, because China's pretty cool, because, and it's scary to say this, because of the Marxist infrastructure. One of the things that people, they're like, oh god, they're so upset about censorship and authoritarianism. But have you seen the roads? They have 3D printers that make bridges. Anybody, like the left, the right, they all agree. They love the infrastructure. So this is the thing. If you go to a country, like you go to Africa, where there's like certain parts of Africa, like you go to Nigeria, where there's in the north no infrastructure. There you go. Now you found a place where there's no Marxism, where they don't care if the road destroys the truck that's trying to bring medicine. Right. Like that's what you're looking for. And otherwise, if you live in the United States and you've got roads paid for by taxes or adopt a highway, you're either a Trotskyite or a Stalinite. That's kind of what it looks like. You're a neoliberal or a neoconservative.
Well, I can push back on that a little bit, because and this isn't an absolute, because
only because the Cubans in your state don't pay the taxes, so you have to have tariffs on your roads.
And also because there are so many toll roads in Florida. Maybe this is as irregular for other states, but there are so many private roads. And they really are. It's worth going to Target instead of Walmart sometimes. Like, it's worth paying 40 cents to drive on this road versus like the state road. And I think that there's some aspect of that, because
that's the whitest privilege thing I've ever heard.
Like it's a private road that you pay to get access to, and you paying to get access to it is supposed to, in theory, pay the thing off. But then also you've got the direct tax, where every time you fill up your gas tank, some of that money that you're getting taxed on top of that is supposed to go to the roads in a way that only the people that would use gas would theoretically be using the roads. So therefore, it's more of a direct tax. And I almost see that, I guess it could be communism still, even if it's a direct tax, versus like I just pay my city or my municipality or my state, and I trust them to sort of delegate and scatter the money around. But I think that the way that I've been used to roads, where like you pay 70 cents if you want to use that road, and it's better, and you won't maybe screw up your car, and then you might even utilize other businesses that are like, hey, whenever we can, we use these private roads.
Yeah, I mean, this is like Robert Moses, right? Who created like New York bridges, and he had like the New York urban planning department, and people thought that the money was going when they cross the bridges.
I know it doesn't work like that. Like,
it doesn't actually work like that. No,
that part, but like, just like, communism.
You're building a quasi-government elite. You're building a quasi-government entity in Florida, which is one of the weirdest pseudo-continental law states. It makes Louisiana look legit. You know what I mean? Florida is a weird place. I mean, I'm for it, but I'm just saying, like, the idea of the toll roads. Talk about Metropolis, David, because you've got the idea of the rich sons who are able to be above in the light, and then you've got the poor sons that are below in the darkness that can't be. That's what it feels like when you can't afford to use a road in Florida. That's crazy.
Dude, who is the guy? This is a little, I don't know, edgy, but who is the guy that Lars von Trier referenced at the Cannes Film Festival for Melancholia before he got blacklisted? I think he's the first person to get blacklisted from Cannes. But where he talked
by the way,
about,
you know where else has roads like that? France. Sorry.
Ooh, yeah, Germany, where he talks about the guy the Nazi who basically designed a lot of the infrastructure and had kind of like, because the building styles and a lot of the aesthetic, the Nazi aesthetic, and he was like, Lars von Trier was like, I like that guy. But he was like, it turned into kind of his Hitler apologist thing, because he said he could understand the man there in the foxhole, whatever, the bunker.
He's
or whatever.
Like, look, I love his work. This is something that kind of blows my mind. When people try to separate art from artists, and I try to do it too. Sometimes you're just like, okay, but
I just notice the date on that article. It's the day of Sandy Hook.
Oh, whoa. Wow. So this article is legit. It's real. Right.
Kind of weird.
Right. So he kind of goes off on his Israelis for it, but he was talking about the aesthetic, and he's like, I actually like the aesthetic.
I mean, Hugo Boss was onto something too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had some cool fashion sense. All right, look, now we have to say something positive about Whoopi Goldberg again, because David wasn't here at one point. I wanted to make everybody say something positive about Whoopi Goldberg, apart from the fact that her name is the best troll in Hollywood ever, right? Like a male Jewish star's name. That's what a black woman would have to do to become famous if she wanted to get cast or even have herself read. Probably. It's kind of brilliant. So I don't know, but you have a thought, David, right? I mean, we've told the story.
I probably have a couple thoughts, but yeah, a good person to talk to about this is Jesse Goldsmith, because his parents, I think his mom was really good friends with Whoopi and Ted Danson, and there's a lot there, basically
and he was a little boy on the set of Sister Act. That's right, Jesse. We're gonna ask him about what that was like.
So he was saying that at one point Carrie Fisher came by the house with script, and it turned out that Carrie Fisher had been people had been giving her scripts, and she had been basically contributing to loads and loads of films for years and years and years without her name ever being attached to them. So she was a serious film writer, and it reminds me of Trumbo, where it's he had all these people working on these scripts together, but you didn't necessarily need to know. Some of them used total aliases, and it was their complete script. But apparently Carrie Fisher was one of those people. But that's kind of a side note from just Whoopi Goldberg. But I don't know, man, I think that there's something to be said for Whoopi Goldberg kind of being what in its own time would be the equivalent of wokeism with politically correct, where she was just really up against the grain with all the people who are really getting more and more uptight with political correctness, which kind of over time just became what we call woke, even though the origins of woke just meant staying awake and hip to what the police were doing and the racial injustices and whatever. And now it's turned into this whole ideology, which is similar
that's
to
what people saying
correctness.
they're cool though. If you say you're woke, you're not woke. It's if you say you're cool, you're not cool. I feel maybe we can take it back somehow. I want the rainbow and woke back. A couple things.
I want to say too, we're saying nice things about Whoopi Goldberg. Mm-hmm. She was sort of this Rosetta Stone of race relations in the 90s for a bunch of different reasons, right? So she makes it acceptable for black people to be Jewish, for Jews to be black. She also made it acceptable for prostitutes and Catholics to interact with each other directly through the Sister Act movie. Right. She had this role of being able to relate to so many different people in different ways and bridge these gaps. Now the streets, the prostitutes can be cool with the ultra orthodox, Catholics. Yeah. And it was almost like a white and black conglomeration. Wasn't the T-Rex movie on top of this, right? So right. She gets swept up into the same cheesy, weird Hollywood stuff that normally you wouldn't see a black person starring in that particular movie. That was almost always reserved for
Jack Flash.
Again, she was almost this weird skeleton key moment in time. I don't think we Like it was the perfect storm for someone like Whoopi Goldberg to exist the way that she did with the name that she had and everything that went along with it. There couldn't really be one now. Shit would be way too politicized.
I'll say something else nice about Whoopi, for a moment, is that documentary about Apu and the guy who had problems with the voice acting of Apu.
What's Wrong with Apu? That was the name.
Yeah,
of it.
that documentary wasn't a very good documentary, but the part where Whoopi shows up and kind of like puts that guy in his place a little bit, honestly, like in terms of perspective and her take on racial stuff.
I don't
like,
remember her being in that.
She was the best part. I watched this whole movie, and my only takeaway was like, wow, that was a great scene with Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah.
That movie killed Apu, basically. It's the weirdest thing. It's almost like PETA gets their way, and now there's no cows.
Right.
Like now there's no dogs. Like dogs just don't. There's no such thing as the domesticated dog now. PETA kind of won. That's kind of how I see this.
I feel like they kind of destroyed like racial character actors. You'll never probably see like, you know, a New Yorker from Juilliard playing an Indian or like a Chinese person again, which was kind of
more Mickey Rooney and Breakfast at Tiffany's type roles.
I think we'll get it, but what's going to happen is it's going to start out as being ultra like intentionally ironic. Like we're going to cast, you know, like the blackest person we can to play the whitest person and vice versa, but someone's going to freaking knock it out of the park.
I think people want that.
Like, it's going to unite the different sides, I think, in some ways.
I think people want that.
I got a Whoopi thing, which is, have you seen the movie Jumpin' Jack Flash?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Early on in my crypto case stuff, I was like doing basic stuff, and with The Shining time periods, before and after The Shining, 666 weeks, 999 weeks. So 999 weeks is Eyes Wide Shut. 666 weeks after The Shining is the World Trade Center bombing. 333 weeks after The Shining is Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Look at this.
Yeah,
like,
right.
And this is a movie
card in Crowley's deck. Look at she's.
Is
in
it?
The,
Oh,
she's
sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever even seen this before.
I think I made one of those dissolves of this poster with another
let's
movie.
not forget, Jack is a surname of John, or strike that, reverse it.
Which
Jumpin'
card does it
Jack.
look like to you from the Crowley deck?
The Fool?
Oh, the Fool. Like, which would be appropriate for Jack because you have, like, you know,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, the Jack and the Fool.
My thing with
bruh.
Yeah, oh totally. My thing with this movie though is like when you go and you watch it, it's about Whoopi is a bank teller or something. She works at a computer terminal, and this is like 86, so it's like one of those old like green fonted old things. And she starts getting coded messages through her computer from some CIA agent, and there's some and it's the most bizarre like relationship. You know, so I, as a crypto kubrologist at the time, I'm like thinking about, okay, like I'm the person at the computer, I'm Whoopi receiving the coded messages through the computer, through the timeline, and all this, so having all these weird, you know, kind of feelings about it. But that is part of the sort of like one of the tropes of crypto, I guess, and expressed in this movie is like secret shit happening through computers and hidden codes. And all on a perfect like timeline, you know, with The Shining. So
right. Well,
I haven't watched it in years, but I need to go
Jumpin'
back
Jack Flash, but a reference to the nursery rhyme of Jack jumped over the candlestick. If you listen to American Pie, the section in that song in which they speak to Jack jumped over. What does he say? Jack jumped over a candlestick. It's referencing Jumping Jack Flash because they played that at Altamont along with Sympathy for the Devil, which is why no angel born in hell could break that Satan spell or whatever. Because you know, even there's more to that. That's we went to like the sacrificial light. I saw the devil laughing with the light or something like that. But like that whole thing is like that all carries like a big symbolic weight because of like the meaning of Jack in regards to like royalty. You look at John F. Kennedy, John Lennon, these like ritual killing scapegoat thing, whether it's conscious or unconscious or whatever it is, all the symbolism is there. And so to me, like there's something really like anthropological that just goes along with looking at these kind of like sacrificial events, you know, like they always tend to carry like like the same symbol set. It's really weird.
Yep. there's a grammar. There's like a grammar that seems to exist with underneath like all cinema, and
I know
this
that
is one example.
I know that Alex, you only have so much time this evening, so I want to make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
to cover any syncs that you have. I'm gonna go through and look. You talked about September 11th because today is the 10th, and tomorrow is when I go see the Back to the Future musical on September 11th.
Oh, nice.
Oh, today.
Well,
that day?
What do you say?
tomorrow.
Is that tonight?
Tomorrow.
Oh,
Back to the
9/11
Future.
you're doing it? Okay.
Isn't it appropriate that the debates are at the edge of September 10th? This is the anniversary of when Rumsfeld announced that trillions missing from the Pentagon, and then the records
Also,
department got
Michael
hit the next day and no one was injured. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I kinda
Michael
wanna pop a bottle of
Jackson's
champagne at midnight.
Michael Jackson's second concert in New York that weekend was the night 9/10.
That's
Just
there's something significant about that
invincible.
concert too, because he played with the Jackson 5. You're right.
Yeah,
and
it was like the
that
final.
was going to be like, well, what do we do to get the PR right for Michael? And then they did that, and then it was like, oh shit, it didn't make the news cycle because at 8:46 the next day, the World Trade Center was struck. Yeah, crazy.
Yes. So, yeah, you wanted me to. Well, first of all, if you go to my timeline, Bitcoin Magazine made a little thread about my article and showed some
sweet.
screenshots. You can read a little bit more of it.
Dude, by the way, anybody who hasn't gotten a copy of the privacy issue, Bitcoin Magazine, you got to get this just for the art. And you have to do it also to read the article by Alex. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah. So it's pretty
But
beautiful.
How do I get to the you said that they made a
If you go back to my page, my main page, and then scroll down just below that again, there it is.
oh hey there you
That
go.
tweet. So they made a little thread with some excerpts and stuff,
Oh
and
sweet.
hopefully people. Yeah. So SyncBook is now officially like been cited by the Bitcoin Magazine, so you can tell everybody
So-
that.
We're
Thanks.
kind of
Anyway,
a
yeah.
big deal for anyone that's new here. That just tuned
Yeah.
in. We're kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Flex. Okay, but what is this? Do you want to read this or tell us about it or
Oh,
parts you want to share?
I mean, guys can read it for yourselves. This is just my article. It's about Bitcoin from a perspective of crypto K, which means like numbers and dates and
I mean, even they
stuff
get
like
it.
that.
They're like, all right, obviously.
them,
this
yeah.
is, So
They-
don't think of
they-
Satoshi
yeah.
being 666 weeks old on the day of the economist world currency issue, but instead that he was 4,242 plus 420 days old. See, the Book of Revelation designates 666 as the number of the beast. This is gonna be fun for like
I
a
go
lot of
on
people.
in about time. Yeah, so I'm waiting for somebody to like call me, start trolling me, and tell me I'm
I'm trying to figure
insane.
something out right now, Alex, because you look at the devil card in tarot, and that corresponds with noon. What is the astrological correspondence? Because when you look at his hand, he actually has the symbol for Saturn on his hand when he's holding the devil in Rider Waite. So if you look up, Andreas, if you look up tarot devil Rider, Rider, and see, look at his hand if you can get a close up of it. We'll just show it. Yeah, zoom in on his hand. You can see he's got the symbol for Saturn there on his hand.
Bro, he's doing this.
Alchemical symbol. But what is the correspondence
the
for the
thing.
devil? I can't think right now. It's actual correspondence.
Mercury, no.
If you look at if you look up the devil in the Thoth deck, if you could do me a favor and just look up devil
David.
Thoth. Thank you. Yeah.
That's
That
right.
doesn't have the edges. I need the one with the edges.
Yeah.
That hand holding it there. No, not the universe though.
What's going on
There,
here?
in the upper right corner, there's one with a hand. Okay, see it? The one with the guy holding the card up there in the corner, right
This
upper
is
right
it?
corner.
Okay.
No. Oh yeah, that works too. Zoom
kinda
in on it.
blurry.
if you could. Yeah, it's kind of. Oh shit.
Love of
Yeah,
God.
go to. Yeah, sorry.
This maybe. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's Capricorn, is it? Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Capricorn, because it's the initiation and the top of the mountain and the mountain goat. So yeah, they attribute it to Capricorn. But it's funny. I was just looking at your Saturn thing, was saying that the devil attributed it to Saturn, and it's interesting that the devil does hold up the Saturn there. And you think God of time? That makes sense. Time is the devil. You know,
That
money
was
is
what
time.
Mark put on the top of his essay about Eyes Wide Shut. That first thing I ever read, which was the devil card, and it's like he's like, there's Stanley Kubrick with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman on the set of Eyes Wide Shut. It's that's it.
Well,
like, ooh, off to the races.
At the end of The Shining, in that photograph, it screams of the devil, right? Jack
yeah.
pose there. Yeah, and what is he holding in his hand? He's holding a little folded up note or something.
Something like that. But what did we talk about? The guy, they found the real picture of the real guy that was in that picture, and his name is Santos Cassini.
That's it.
And Cassini is the explored probe to Saturn. That approach, it actually arrived at Saturn 23,700 days after The Wizard of Oz released. So
it's a different spelling, but it's the same phonetics, so who cares? It's interesting.
Yeah, it is, but it's a similar thing. And Santos stands to Saturn. I think it's more than it's not a leap. So yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Quantum leap.
Before you disappear, I also want to make sure we don't miss out on talking about 93, Love is the Law, Rest in Peace.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. I was like, oh, he's died. That was lifespan. It's not going to be anything like too crazy. It's not going to. But 93 years and 237 days. In other words, he died on the 237th day after his 93rd birthday. So, and 93 is 23 plus 70. So it's 237 all the way down.
I don't know. Did they share sets or something? What was the deal with Empire Strikes Back and A Clockwork Orange? Like they were just produced simultaneously?
No, that would be 10 years apart. So I don't.
Really? 1980.
Yeah.
What was the deal then? There's a connection. I'd have to ask Patrick Svek. He has a whole thing on his blog, blog of caverns relating.
Well, as I note on my Twitter there, James Earl Jones is another guy that was introduced to the world by Stanley Kubrick in Dr. Strangelove. That was his first role, and
there we go. Yeah, so the guy who plays Darth Vader in the suit, not James Earl Jones' voice, but the guy in the suit. That's the guy in A Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah.
At the end, he carries him in from the cold.
I forgot about that. About that. David Prowse is the muscular guy, and so James Earl Jones is he's like the meat puppet for the voice of James Earl Jones, and that's Darth Vader.
Right.
So that's pretty.
Right, and he died recently, but he was the Green Guard who was he was a British wrestler, and he was a PSA guy that stopped kids from crossing the street without looking. It's like they look for the crossing, and it's like the Green Guard would show up, and it's this big guy, you know.
So then
he got in trouble because he predicted what Star Wars was about, right? That's why they kind of wrote him out of the show, because he's like, the only thing that makes sense here would be like he finds out that Darth Vader is his father. And George Lucas is like, shut up.
Wasn't it the Wired interview back years ago where George Lucas said that if he could identify with any character in Star Wars, it would be Darth Vader? And
then he said Jar Jar later in life, but first it was.
Did he really?
Yeah, when he was younger, it was Darth Vader.
Because they're both evil.
Well, of course, he's Darth Vader.
One doesn't.
Darth Vader is exactly. I should want you to repeat that. I interrupted you. Say that again.
I was saying that only one gets redemption, and I'll add that is clearly Darth Vader.
I don't know. I mean, because clearly Anakin, he thinks of himself as this beautiful little boy, you know, who's become this evil old man. That's okay, deal with your thing. But that was before his divorce. And after he's made young Indiana Jones and he's done some things and he starts to make the Anakin thing, he realizes that there's this devil on his shoulder, I think, which is Jar Jar, which is everybody thinks is stupid, thinks is innocuous, but actually is really discerning and is really effective, right? And using drunken boxing as a metaphor.
Everyone's going to talk Mandela effect now because of the line. And I'm sorry, I'm going to piss people off with this, and I really don't care, because I'm just every time that somebody tells me that the universe conspired or whatever, it can happen, universe can conspire, but that they changed the line, I always ask them the same thing, which is, okay, recite to me the other lines from around that whole scene. You know it so well that you're going to say that before people really had VCRs as much, and they were just talking about what they saw in the theater and the way that things got repeated, that's not what it was.
Obi-Wan never told you what really happened to your father.
He told
me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father.
That's not true. That's improbable.
Impossible.
I know. I just like it better him saying improbable.
You should be. It's a Mandela effect.
That's a Mandela effect.
That's
for
where
sure.
your laser disc
I'm gonna
copy
push that
says
new
improbable.
Mandela effect that he says.
It's improbable. Inconceivable. That would be great. I wish.
The
it
dollar-
was.
What I care about is who shot
Dolly's
first.
racist.
That's the big
mean-
one for me.
Well, that's
Why-
not even Mandela effect. That's George
Like
Lucas
a
effect.
special edition
Yeah.
Greedo scene that they.
I
just-
think he's trying to say it's a different universe though because of that, because of changing it. He's like, in this universe, it's not his fault. He just
Yeah,
has to do
this
it.
universe, it's kind of lame.
Yeah, it's more for kids.
Well, just like ET and guns. I think that maybe
more
it's
for
not
mom.
a Mandela effect to us, but if you didn't know that, you didn't know it was intentionally done, and you just think like, oh, I could have sworn there were guns in that. I guess there's not. I guess there never were.
Woo! Super chat. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. That's cool of you.
Guys, I'm gonna go
Range again.
for
All right.
the hour. So
You don't have
Thank
anything
you.
else you want to say about CNN and James Earl Jones? Because we only did Star Wars. That's it.
Oh, I did have something I wanted to say about James Earl Jones actually, which is that because then it goes forward. So he's in Strangelove, and then the movie Hunt for Red October comes out, which the book puts Tom Clancy on the map, but then the movie comes out, and John McTiernan, who is an artist, cast James Earl Jones as the Admiral. And there's this whole weird exchange with them, between Alec Baldwin, Jack Ryan, and Admiral Greer, who is James Earl Jones, where they're talking about. I don't know. I don't want to go into too much detail, but there's a bear. The bear's name is Stanley. The whole movie kind of is bookended.
What's the movie called?
Hunt for Red October.
Oh, all right. I forgot there's a bear named Stanley. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first thing that happens. It's so strange. So anyway, I have a whole. I actually have an unfinished like chapter, or maybe a Substack article that I do. But because I went in deep into this, and I learned that the action.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there it is. Who's Stanley? Stanley's a bear.
Oh my god.
There's this great.
Oh, this is crazy.
There's this great. I mean, he says it's like totally coded information. It feels
in the
like I
Hunt
don't
for
know.
Red October. Oh my god.
So
I've
okay, I'll
always
just
wondered more about the bear. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just leave it that. And
That's good. That's messed up, man. And that's him too. Wow.
and then it hooks into Die Hard because John McTiernan is like all of his movies are really interesting. And then he gets railroaded by the establishment and sent to jail, prison for like.
you
some
guys know who
weird reason.
Stanley the Bear is, obviously. I think David knows who the bear is,
Yeah.
but Augustus Owsley Stanley, right? Like,
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, there's a ton of.
I
them.
think
Bear.
the one that sticks out to me though is Augustus Owsley Stanley III, because
Yes.
Augustus Owsley Stanley was Stanley. His grandfather was the governor of Arkansas. He was tapped in. He was able to do what he wanted. He was a chemist. He made LSD and he made pills for the Grateful Dead, where today we even associate the bear with the Grateful Dead, right? So, and LSD and Stanley. And so I think there's something about that sort of LSD. You met Stanley. you know,
Right.
directly.
Steal your face and Darth Vader. There's something weird there.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right,
All right. I'm gonna-
Alex, get out of here.
See you later,
dude.
guy.
Go,
Later,
go
buddy.
Go love your family. Isn't that beautiful? All right.
Oh.
I don't know. Owsley's an interesting character just because of the fact that his governor grandfather, he could do whatever he wanted, and that's like the beginning of that art scene. And you have to think like in San Francisco and New York, you had people that weren't in Hollywood, and so people that had been in Hollywood and got out of Hollywood, they could be in these cool art cities like London, for instance, right? Like there's these places where you could be, and cool things were happening, but it wasn't necessarily something that was recorded and broadcast all over the country. These were events you went to. They were kind of private, maybe 1,000 people, maybe 100 people, maybe 20 people. But these, this is where they were innovating with all these things, and all these crazy kids, they could give them drugs, right? That's a big part of what those.
Can I share a story related with Owsley that my boss actually has recorded? I didn't get these recordings from because James Mazzio, who is has an incredible history. He was one of our best clients, if not our best. For he's a painter. He's really close with Neil Young. He was the original light guy for Velvet Underground. Before the guy that's more well known at this point, he was like a pioneer in that oil projection stuff, whatever. But he used to live with Owsley years ago when he was in the Navy. And he came home one day, and his refrigerator, everything that was in his refrigerator had been emptied onto the dining room table, and the whole refrigerator was filled with like stands with vials of pink LSD 25. Like just the whole thing stacked up, like you're looking at thousands of hits of acid. And there was like $100 or something on the table with the food, and it was a note with it from Owsley saying, "Hey, I needed to borrow the fridge. I hope it's okay, whatever." And just after that, Maz was on a ship, and one of his top superior officers came up and was like, "Hey," kind of whisper like, "Hey, like I've been hearing a lot about this stuff that the hippies are into," and he was like, "If anyone around here could help me out, like I think it would be you. Can you help me get some of that?" And he got freaked out for a second because he's like, "Am I about to get popped by my superior officer?" And he just like, and so he just told him, he was like, "I can help you get that." And so that day they got flown off the ship, and he ended up taking this like superior officer in the Navy to his home, where he dosed him a heavy amount of LSD 25, and that man's life was changed forever. But yeah.
See, I wish to God that like 2019 was more like 1969. You know what I mean? Like it could have been that could have been like if everybody was like, "Hey, where can I get like this new like LSD COVID LSD 19?" You know, that would have been.
So basically, like 2CB is what it sounds like you're describing.
Oh God, yeah, that's fair. Did you see the movie Magic Trip, which is really just a documentary that has all of the footage of Ken Kesey's, not all of the footage, but it has a compilation and a montage of the footage of Ken Kesey's trip across America in a magic bus, where they invented tie-dye, theoretically, by taking the op art light style, like you said, drip art, where, you take like a overhead projector, you put like paints and water. Here, they just put paints in the river or creek and then drop their shirts in them. And then they came out with these tie-dyed shirts that they wore, and then they painted their bus. But this was this entourage that went from the West Coast, from Menlo Park Veterans Hospital, where the CIA had been giving out research chemicals, to a ventriloquist, Olympic, Stanford graduate and scholarship student, Ken Kesey, who actually went on to invent Annie's Organics, including Annie's macaroni and cheese, and do rather well for himself. But first, he did his book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then he went on to drive across America, try to be like Jack Kerouac, all while apparently the government was watching and keeping him safe, radioing to police that there was this thing going on, and Neil Cassidy being apparently some sort of a maybe handler's double agent or MK agent, the asset that didn't necessarily
know about that. Really? Do you have something for that?
Yeah, I mean, he was in the military. He was on all kinds of amphetamines. He was supposed to be taking care of them. He ran
constantly. True.
And not just like speed. Just this is fun when we say words like acid or fizz or speed. So, like, he was on like very interesting research amphetamines like dextro or chlorophenolphenamine or psychedelic amphetamines and things like that were separate and apart from what the other guys were taking.
Speaking of which, that's what these politicians are on, right? Some, not that particular, but like it's all legal. These people are high. Like, but the way we are, most people just jump at their like, oh, well, they're taking this or they're something that they know, and it's like these people are clearly on things that most people don't know.
Yeah,
there's no question.
Emphasis on most, yeah. But there are definitely a lot of these chemicals that they did have in the 60s, and these were some of the first times. For instance, they go to Canada, and they don't go until they get to Canada to try AMT, IT290, alpha-methyltryptamine. Like, that's only tried in Canada.
Cadillac of psychedelics.
Yeah, the Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce
is what they say. Ooh, even better.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Provigil?
Yeah, for sure. Modafinil, right?
Yeah, so modafinil is basically like an accepted version, modern version of, I guess, kind of like a meth type substance where like you take it and you can just stay awake for 3 days. They gave it to fighter pilots to stay awake for overnight missions.
Yeah, it's not a meth. Modafinil is a nootropic that isn't it's not a phenethylamine. It's a let's look it up here. It is, yeah, it's a nootropic. So it has like serotonin attached to nitrogen, hydrogen, right? And so this is a salt that they usually like will release as an envelope. This nootropic, so it continually gives you new mental hormones. It's not the same as a phenethylamine or an amphetamine, right? So an
Right,
amphetamine,
well, and it also has it's also psychoactive too.
yeah, to a mild extent, right? It's like, so it's because it's a nootropic. If you took a lot of nootropics, the nootropics are again neural hormones. So if you had a lot of extra neural hormones, you would probably feel some psychoactive effect. It's nothing like, say, like a tryptamine. I mean, a tryptamine. Wow, actually, interesting. Let's go back for a second and look at modafinil there, because that was interesting. Look at this compared to a tryptamine. So there is definitely, you can see some similarity between the two, but yeah, modafinil is definitely separate and apart and not designed to like go clubbing with. But a lot of artists, and I've seen it's supposed to be for narcolepsy, like it's a Wall Street drug for sure, right? Cool. Well, I'm glad we covered drugs.
Yeah.
Anyway, you should check out Magic Trip, because what's interesting about that is the CIA were recording them, and then what is it? Which Ginsburg was like, I'm pretty sure you guys are being followed all the time. They're like, no, dude, don't be paranoid. And then the Freedom of Information Act comes out. It's like, no, dude, like, here, look, they were like recording you the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah.
They were recording us the whole time.
And then Neil Cassidy walks across the border. He walks across the border into Mexico, and he dies literally across the border, like just after the completion of the acid tapes. Because at the Paul Sweet House, they would just project these all the time.
Yeah, so I don't know. I have to look at the dates, but isn't there something to be said for, okay, so Ken Kesey's doing these acid tests. They're not really tests. We know what's going to happen, but whatever. And then the point at which he says that's it on film, and he's like, puts a thing out, we're done, no more acid tests, like we've taken this as far as we're going to take it or whatever. What is the timing of the relationship to that and Abby Hoffman's encircling of the Pentagon, I wonder?
Okay, so acid test graduation was 19, I think probably 60, I want to say 66. Okay, and then Abby Hoffman, levitate Pentagon.
Wait a minute, that's the graduation
67.
ceremony? I'm not talking about the graduate. What is
graduation? So for some lore, first they have the acid tests, and then they do those all over the place in Santa Cruz, and eventually it gets too big, so they go to Marin County or something like that. And then at that point, getting too big, they get in trouble in LA, and he says, okay, I'm going to go tell everybody on TV that we're done with the acid tests. Mm-hmm. And so instead of having an acid test, they have an acid graduation party.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't know. I may have somewhere, but yeah, it's been a while. Okay, yeah. And so
what? So I think that happens in SoQuel by the Golden Buddha. I
didn't realize that was that early, but interesting. Okay,
it happens right in where they sell the pumpkins and the Christmas trees in that little park.
Right, I know exactly what you're talking about, by Wells Fargo and the Skyview.
Yeah, and then they also have like part of the building at that time. But so there's footage of it, and I guess we could even check that out. By the way, did you know if you ever see commercials on YouTube and you don't want to see the commercials on YouTube, you can just watch it through a Bing window? It's crazy. Like you just click on this right here, and it doesn't let the commercials go through. So
interesting. Good.
Yeah, it's sweet. But yeah, so they do the whole acid testing, and this might be once they've. It looks like this is the Paul Sweethouse stage. I think this is that point when they've come.
Is that actually there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I could be wrong, but look, isn't that that's the second part right there?
It looks like it. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
So see, there's the two beams and everything like that. So yeah, this is a place that like.
Oh my god, you're checking me out. I've totally partied here. Crazy.
Yeah. So, but then they go on to after the acid test, I think they go to Mexico. And so because they go for like a year, and they're living in Mexico, and he's doing like crazy speed.
Okay, so I think I might be off, but what is the encircling the Pentagon date?
So it isn't wrong, because that's 66, and then this is 67.
Okay.
So it's a year after, right? And it's not necessarily too far away, and that is the next. I feel like Abby Hoffman's an interesting one too, because like he's probably not evil, but I always thought it was pretty weird how he's using meme art so well in order to create this controversy that's riling up the Midwest, because he's not in, it's causing not just New York and California, it's going to Chicago, and then this is causing riots that are getting people killed, and then going to DC, like doing these like levitational rituals. Something about that to me always felt like, wow, the government would do that. But the more you look at his life and the idea that they were constantly trying to take him out, it's like maybe this guy.
No,
he
passes that test. He really does. If you
people
dig
say
into
the
this
same
one,
about all of us, me especially, right? So yeah.
I mean, no, I mean, this is the thing. Is it's like he was doing something. He was doing his own version of a psyop, but it was. This is from Psychedelics. Like
it wasn't psyop. It was psy art.
Right. They did not. He is a genuine variable. You can go on and on about all the ways that he was a genuine variable. It's rare, I know, and it's really easy to be cynical. But I'm Ken Kesey, another story. Ken Kesey, I'm not going to go there. And even like you're pointing out Neil Cassidy, whatever. Like I believe that. I just want to.
I think they're both real people and they're real variables. But in the same way that anyone can be handled, if you got an agency at that time, you have to imagine they're like, who is this person? Who is that person? As soon as you become a person of attention, they're like, what does this person do? What can we do?
No, we're talking disclosed files at this point on him, like how he was having to, like they were after him. That is a fact. And like and they did not get him, so to speak, like they did Tim Leary, so
and get him out of with the helicopter to
he's kind of like an earlier like Julian Assange, but like with a lot of psychedelics involved.
Dude, the Tim Leary escape is pretty interesting, right? Like I think people don't think about that they literally helicoptered him out of a jail, like that's crazy that they did that. Like America, man, America.
I know, step aside Bronson, am I right?
No,
crazy.
Well, not okay, really. What about like, so in terms of things that, because election debate, it's premature election, undebatable.
I'm just interested to see if Trump brings up clear choice.
Yeah, basically.
And he probably won't. But if he did, good angle if that's what he's going for.
Maybe we should like.
In terms of if you want a criticism of the left right now, that's a pretty big one.
That it involves too much ration and logic.
Put Super PAC with it or something. Yeah.
Yeah, what should we say about the Clear Choice?
Look at their website if you can get to it. If you go to the Clear Choice website, you can see I think they only have like 3 sentences or 6 sentences or something here. Yeah, so this right here tells you all the main things.
Read it.
No third party or independent candidate can win the 2024 presidential election, yet they've played a decisive role as spoilers in recent presidential elections, often helping the candidate who wins fewer votes secure victory in the Electoral College. Despite having an outsized impact on the results, third-party candidates historically receive little scrutiny. Clear Choice fills this vacuum to ensure accountability and ballot integrity for all presidential candidates in 2024. We exist to show Americans the clear choice between President Biden's strong vision for the future and the danger of unelectable spoiler candidates tipping the election to Donald Trump. Irony being, these people have been nonstop, state by state, on Kennedy, despite the whole time Kennedy taking more votes from Trump. So like their only fear, otherwise they wouldn't have done this, was that Kennedy would win. If they didn't put everything they had into doing what they got the media to comply with, and for
Biden allied with them.
Weaponizing the courts. This is what Kamala was threatening that Trump would do if elected, is weaponize the Department of Justice. Yet they've been weaponizing the courts against all opposition, which is like super Russia-like, and that's the irony with them, with their crazy fear of Russia.
Right? Yeah. I mean, so this idea too is scary because this is what pushes us back into this bipartisan thing that they can control again. If they're like, okay, well, as long as we can control the election, we at least we can buy 2 candidates.
Yeah.
Right, but
yeah. So them remove, like successfully getting him removed from ballots with the residence issue. This makes it so that then he all of a sudden those votes would be, if he didn't do what he did with Trump, Kamala would more likely have the whole election in the bag, assuming whatever happens with the debates,
This is
or whatever.
pushing so hard though, because eventually you get to a point where, I mean, social media and people are so sick of astroturfing. Like the Democratic Party just looks like suits that are getting paid to be there in swag bags, like they're at an Oscar party for movies that no one wants to see, right? And it's like, so people want authenticity. We're gonna get to a point where, we do the same thing they did in Ukraine, where they put up a YouTuber, Zelensky, through Soros money, that has a really, like, he's got his like little noble following. And I think that's where this is headed, essentially, because this can't last much longer.
Right. Well, Zelensky was elected on a peace ticket,
Right. Trump, they did this video recently I just saw where they were, because like they said that 78% of Jews supported Kamala. So this guy interviewed a bunch of Jews about like who they wanted to vote for.
Dude, Rappaport wants Trump in that particular area, and he's like a single issue voter. So Michael Rappaport, who for years has been going off about how much he despises Donald Trump with full-on DTS. Right. And then he's just like, actually, he seems to be the best on Israel. And here's how, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, he did,
this
move
guy,
the embassy to Jerusalem, and
Nate Friedman went around the one of the more Hasidic neighborhoods, right, in New York, and he was like, he wanted to see if this was true. He's Jewish, so he's like, I'll ask people, and he talks to them in Hebrew, talks to them in English, whatever he's got to do. And a lot of people didn't want to talk to him because it's a very religious neighborhood. Luckily, he was speaking Jewish, and eventually he's like wearing a kibbah and has a necklace on. But he ends up doing tefillin and all these different things he has to do in order to talk to these people. They want him to do tefillins and different rituals and prayers and things like that. And basically, I think he got just about 100% of people in the neighborhood said they wanted Trump. They thought Trump was strong. He's going to support Israel. They wanted Trump. They think Trump is, a better candidate. Like, they're concerned about Kamala. They're worried that, these are secular Jews. They're not just, some of these were very religious Orthodox Jews. Secular Jews saying, they don't want anyone iffy about Palestine, right? So I feel like you have, like this guy. He's like, Trump, he's strong. I think he'll do good. And I agree. I think this is where, so it's just weird to me because everywhere you go, you're not seeing the numbers that they're putting on the screen ever anymore. It's like the biggest dead internet moment for
you definitely can't trust the polls totally. I mean, I myself have witnessed firsthand how the polls can be.
I don't even trust the outcomes of the real thing, let alone the polls.
But it's like all I get, so I go to the Trump on the Twitter and I see like Mark Hamill and Stephen King talking about it. And I say, how you feel about the Cheney thing. The people that are responding to that, they seem like they're also paid celebrities. They're not, right? Like, I don't, is there, I don't know. I mean, there's so few people.
How did they do that? I don't even know. I'm like,
anybody out there?
You got Dick Cheney. You don't say. No. I was told that recently, and I didn't see that online at first. Somebody said that to me, and I was like, you mean Liz, right? I just saw that, Liz. And they're like, no, Dick. And I was all, Dick? Oh, good for you.
The whole thing.
Wow.
It's all Dick, baby.
Oh, wow. Now that's the endorsement.
It's basically like the equivalent of the Ku Klux Klan endorsing you. It's like, oh my God, please don't do that right now. Unless but is it just because they want, I feel like so much of this is so perfect. It's hard not to be, I'm trying to just be a synchromistic. I think wisdom is flowing with the universe instead of insisting how the universe should be. But oh my God, does it not feel like a conspiracy? It's crazy. This idea that Trump is not that vigorous or invigorated. Like he is pretty cool to an extent, but he is more tired than he was before. He's not attacking people as much, and we all admit that. He seems kind of tired. But compared to Biden, compared to all these things, after a gunshot, it feels like there's just so many things that are compensating for him more effectively than the propaganda that compensated for Biden, to the point that they ended up just using the negative compliment of Biden's propaganda to make him a Ford. And they've done this. I said this when he was elected, like he will be a Ford president. And what did Ford do? He did Groucho Marxian, Three Stooges like physical comedy, right? The entire world's watching America after Nixon and Watergate and the Church Committee hearings with the CIA, and what do they see? They see Ford tumbling downstairs. What does Biden do? Tumbles downstairs, right? It's completely. This is a perfect way to prepare you for people wanting a strong leader. It's like stick and carrot. So it's hard not to imagine. It's hard to imagine that this is just so serendipitous and organic. I try really hard to see things that way.
Yeah, I was trying to find. I went to the farmers market the other day, and I had
Travis, so cool.
So I don't know, man, if you can get to my Facebook, but like I barely ever use Facebook, but it's the only place I shared the photo. But I just like I basically was like, okay, well, I've been going every week with like a RFK banner type sign thing, and I was like, this week I was like, I'm not doing that, and I was like, I got to take a different approach because I need to be able to basically surprise people, give them something that's they're not, anticipating necessarily. So yeah, if you scroll down just a little bit there.
Hey, this was a Whoopi post. We didn't even bring up the Whoopi Facebook account point.
Right, that's true. That was part of me leaving Facebook or getting removed. But so this, if you could blow that up real quick, this sign right here. So I said, yeah. So this is what I was having people react to the other. I had the best day at this farmers market that I've had of any day so far, for the most part, because it was a lot of positivity from people. Because I've been a lifelong Democrat who can't help but see that the DNC sabotaging their quote sheepdog candidates, Bernie's campaign twice, and their $1 billion super PAC Clear Choice ruthlessly using lawfare against Bobby Kennedy after the DNC pushed to elevate their quote Pied Piper candidate Trump. That's from the John Podesta email to the DNC outlining their strategy for 2016, by the way, in the first place, proves that they are a greater threat to the democratic process than anyone else. So understand, I'm in California. Like, I'm
all right. Really quickly, I want everyone who's watching this to look at this for a second and understand this is why the left can't meme. Look at it.
No, I know.
Look, don't touch it. Don't touch it. It might get on you.
This isn't a real meme.
I'm just kidding. I know, but this is really, I think, the underlying issue with the left and protesting. But I do love the sentiment. I do love the sentiment.
It's true. But I mean, how do you consolidate something that you're like, what is the freaking crazy corrupt thing that's taking place? Like, I could talk about corporate capture and the rotating door of regulatory agencies with CEOs of companies.
Right.
And all this kind of stuff, but it's just like, dude, like essentially, like, because I'm standing next to Kamala supporters, you know what I mean, with a stand, with donations, with a pile of buttons for Kamala, with no policies, I got books in front of me. Like, it's not just like this is all I have. I got like
were there people
junior information, like I'm sharing like the actual thing.
Were there people going to the Kamala booth?
Yeah, dude, I've been like, this is like, it's a crazy scene down there with that politically, and you got the Free Palestine people next to me last time too. So it's like,
so there are people that are like going in and supporting Kamala while there are Free Palestine people, and there's others protesting, and there's people that are like, dude, it's like sword on.
Have you seen Life of Brian? Like the scene where it's like Terry Gilliam's there and he's covered in mud and he's just all shouting, like they got stand after stand with people like doing their sermon or whatever. That's basically what's happening. You're just like, it's a bazaar of like people with political
just
leanings,
screaming. Oh my god! I was at the state fair in Minnesota and I saw a Kamala Harris like kind of booth there, and it was like completely empty. And there was a bunch of in Minnesota is where Tim Walz is from. He's the vice president candidate, but also the governor here. And I did see a lot of people with a button or a hat or a shirt that said Waltz, but it was always invariably never Waltz. Like it was like there's such like everyone in this state hates him as much. I'm trying to compare it to like the president of Brazil. You know what I mean? Like it's like they hate him like that, and so it's just really funny to see these candidates get any sort of like it's weird to imagine like there's T-shirts for sale and shit. Right. You're like, what the hell? Like who's gonna wear a Kamala Waltz T-shirt? Oh god, you see a lady.
If I say I'm tabling for Kennedy, I'm not telling people ever like who to vote for. All I'm doing is having conversations with people and basically sharing information and listening to information. So it's just like all I've had is like these great conversations for the most part. And every so often somebody comes up and their heads explode. But like for the most part, if people walk up angry, they leave thinking, and they're like, well,
good
I have to reevaluate
conversations,
things. You know?
any good conversation with people that had like reasonable reasons that they want to support Kamala? Because like so far all I've got is Stephen King and Mark Hamill. You know?
No one can talk about policies. It's like no one can talk about Kamala's position on most things. Like it's all like they're talking about Biden, and I'm like, what about her? Like what is the deal? So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. But yeah, I mean, you remember that debate that happened the last time that she debated, as far as I know, it was the last time, where Tulsi Gabbard like called her out on those 5,000 inmates that she refused to release from prison despite being urged to do so several times from the Supreme Court. And she said the only reason why she was refusing to release the minor drug offense inmates was that they needed them for labor. And so she was called out on that by Tulsi Gabbard. She lost, like, I believe 20-something% of her support, like immediately, like that day, because it was such a heavy blow. Debates can change the whole trajectory.
Well, I'm just curious because of the whole idea. Because like, all right, again, I think the real thing here, I know what we want to see, but that's like like what I want to see in a new Terminator movie, and it always lets me down. What I expect to see is accusations of he's gonna blow up the world, and you know he's working with Russia, and she's a Marxist, and she's everything Russia isn't anymore. You know what I mean? She's like she's like really the Marxist thing. But to me, that's weird. And you kind of brought this up earlier about Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. And I would give credit to Engels here too. But Marx describes a horror novel, right? Essentially, it's the perfect horror story. It's a Frankenstein monster. So we've created this monster, capitalism. This is a vampiric energy. It's this transcendental. It's really interesting because Marx is supposed to be this like materialist atheist, but because of that, he's a perfect horror writer because he's created this really believable, like this could happen to anyone you know. Like they could become, power could corrupt them, and they would become corrupted by power. It's a really brilliant horror story, and it's interesting because anybody could be a capitalist. Right? We think of this now, we're like, wow, like psychological operation. Like the United States government invented this idea of calling people communists or calling them terrorists, and anybody could be one. Guess where that comes from? Right? Because it's different than saying someone's in a nation or they're in a state. You're saying that this person is a capitalist, right? It's potential. This person's a communist. It's potential that they're ideologically influenced in a way that they might not even know. They might not even understand or comprehend. That's the origin of that sort of mind control zombie narrative, right? It's a very interesting horror story.
But what comes first, the neuroticism or like the systems? Like it seems like the systems emerge from neuroses, and that they're invariably directed in ways that are not going to be ideal by that simple fact. Like people have this notion that neuroses come out of political parties, like people go neurotic because of this, but it's in the formulation, like Reich said, you know.
You know what? That's a better chicken or egg than I would have thought, because I was going to be like, oh, of course. But then I'm thinking it's the political body, and the political body's a representation of a system of bodies. And so your own body, right? And so your own neuroses comes from your own systems. And so there is something to that.
Right. Well, there's like collective neuroses, and we see evidence of that. So you can see the way that like people are affirming their illusions together. Like that's how confirmation bias exists. That's why different people will have different definitions of quote unquote common sense. You'll have one person be like, oh, well, that's just common sense. And then it's like somebody's totally diametrically opposed. It's like, oh, this is common sense. So, you know, it's inherent, but it's like a blanket thing.
When you guys are talking about like the neuroses and then like politics deriving from them or them causing it, I think that's one of the best arguments I've ever heard being pro-capitalist, is that, especially if you compare it to communism, the way that I've heard it explained is
communism is not separate from capitalism. Communism is a form of capitalism.
So the best way that I think I've heard this put across, and feel free to pick it apart, but it's that capitalism is designed around the concept of self-interest and greed. It takes that as an inherent fact, an inherent flaw in just human behavior, period, and it builds around it. whereas communism almost ignores that it exists, or pretends that it doesn't, or it just simply doesn't address the concept the same way that capitalism has it baked in. And for that reason, it seems that capitalism is just more like practical, because it's based on regular behavior and it incentivizes it, versus something where you have to like cram a square peg into a round hole almost.
Right, but there's a big go ahead, Andreas. I'm sorry.
I would just say capitalism and communism are more connected than they are separated. Communism is an evolution of capitalism. It's a managerial theory practiced by capitalists. You have state capitalism, which is the Soviet Union practiced control of all resources to capitalize. They sold things and they made deals and trade, and they had investments which were not necessarily monetary, because they wanted to sustain the production of goods and services and individuals. Maybe they needed nuclear warheads, maybe they needed engineers, right? But they made sure food got to certain places.
When you say it's not monetary, though, that's hard for me to comprehend, because in capitalism, everything is monetary. Every resource you can throw at something can be boiled down to some sort. It's all StarCraft, right? Everything boils down to like those,
but their problem with that. So there's a great movie with Joe Montana as a baseball player who becomes the leader of a former Soviet team. So
Joe Montana as a baseball player? Are they just really?
Montana? Is it Joe Montana?
You're not talking about the quarterback for the 49ers, are you?
No, I don't think it was him.
I was like, what movie is he in?
It's Joe Montana, and it's in a baseball.
Okay.
You know this guy? This guy
right
here.
Totally.
He's like a Ray Romano baseball, Russia. It's called Comrades of Summer. See, this is me and the kind of things I like to watch. Comrades
now
of Summer.
that the comrades of summer have gone. Okay, but look,
the reason I'm bringing it up. So he meets a guy and he gets to this thing and he's like, "Hey, is this the baseball team? They don't have anything. They don't have any uniforms or anything like that." And he leaves his Walkman in his locker. He comes back, his Walkman's gone. And so he's like, "Oh God, someone stole my Walkman." He comes back the next day, or maybe it's even an hour later, and he sees the guy, and he's like, "Has anyone seen my Walkman?" And he's like, "Well, I took your Walkman."
Ooh.
And he's like, "Why?" "Well, I had to exchange, because right now the Soviet Union just collapsed, and so I needed something to exchange for money to get a car, and I took the car and I exchanged that for this piece of real estate, this apartment, and I exchanged this apartment for this house, and I exchanged that house for this bond, and I exchanged that bond for the stock in the local oil company that's just been formed now that the state no longer controls it, so take over major position in that company, and I traded that for a huge amount of money and for 2 Walkmans. And here's one Walkman back." And so he's like, "Oh my God, like these people are great capitalists, because they understand there's multiple values to a thing, depending on who it needs it at what time, each according to their needs," right? And so Marxist capitalism is the most sustainable form to proliferate positive reciprocity. And positive reciprocity is where both partners of an exchange are benefited. Right. And these are things that I don't think Americans understand about Marxism, but also there's a negligence to what capitalism is, because capitalism is not feudalism. It's like, look at Native Americans that take a buffalo from a herd and they make jackets and all these things. Capitalism is very different than greed. Greed has to do with scarcity and is a psychological disorder that's produced from consumer society and feudalism.
Right. So Thomas Paine, if you read a lot of Thomas Paine's ideas, they scream of what we would now call communism, if somebody was to say these ideas. So but I mean, my question for you, Thomas, would be I agree with everything that you said, but I would ask you, when the Obama administration or whatever bailed out GM when they went under, was that free market capitalism? And if not, what kind of capitalism is that?
No, crony. It's called crony capitalism, right?
Crony capitalism, right? And so this is pretty much the crux of the issue, right? Because we're throwing these terms around, but are we talking about capitalism? Just like it's kind of become cliche to be like, well, we haven't tried real communism, but
Well, we haven't tried real
I don't know. These are
capitalism,
legitimate
yeah.
questions.
But
There you go.
I would say that half-assing capitalism does seem to work better than half-assing communism.
Okay, I would actually say maybe we have. Yeah,
Cuba's pretty base. Chile was awesome until they killed Allende. I don't know. Maybe. I think sometimes socialism works about better than we realize. And I would also say, like, if you think about it, a dictatorship that has social services, let me give you some examples of ones that work. Denmark, Sweden, the United Kingdom, you can go back for centuries. Basically, any dictatorship, part of the deal with the social contract is an exchange of positive governance, where they're giving you an education, where they're protecting your land, whatever, right? So you end up with essentially socialism and dictatorships go together.
Not to, I mean, I hope this isn't like spicy or bringing like a new dynamic in here that doesn't fit, but all those examples too tend to be monocultures. In a monoculture, there's almost like an unspoken desire to maintain and uphold not just a status quo, but like a certain amount of elevation. But when you get into a melting pot society, I think it doesn't work the same way.
Rome. So you think Britain's the most British food I can think of is a bowl of curry. Right, and so like Rome is a concept of homogenization,
actually, right?
Right.
That would be the best example.
Bangers and mash, but whatever.
So, no, not anymore. I feel like like it's curry, but like if you think about it, the most likely thing to happen to a culture like Roman culture that is spreading and everything and trying to define itself, but spreading so fast that it can't fully indoctrinate its people, is you end up with an ambiguous new culture that emerges, and it's more of a piece than a culture. You have a piece that's kept. Right, you're like, this is the side of the road we drive on. I think that's
right, but there's a difference between truth and peace, right?
Yeah, it's harmonization.
As you'll see in like the Thoth deck, like you're
ecosystem.
Like, right. Well, you have they're both sides are there. They got their weapons, but they're like, no, we're not going to fight right now. Whereas peace is like the war is over if you want it, or I guess you wanted it, When do we ever see peace? Like we see a lot of truce. We don't really see much peace, I guess, and like maybe in some of our minds if we do Vipassana or something.
FUCT says Andreas has really buff eyebrow muscles because I'm constantly like this world. I'm just constantly like raising my eyebrows, like really, like every day. Like I just do eyebrow ups, like all
right,
the time.
Except in the middle of the night when you're in awe over your visionary realm. But yeah,
even then there's just a lot of lifts. Yeah. I don't know.
You got your face stolen a few times, as I recall. So.
Oh my God, yeah. That's the thing that seems to be like the new thing is people always think I'm everybody else now. They're like, you look like this person, you look like that person. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, yeah, he's got a face, looks like you. Like basically all faces.
When I'm saying that, you realize that I'm making a Grateful Dead reference to the skull of the Grateful Dead, right? That you got your face stolen. Like this is a cultural thing with the. Family acid, that you're given family acid and it's like they took your face,
I'm catching
face melted off.
Oh, the Grateful Dead. Yeah, the Grateful Dead. Like, is there more CIA Thule Society logo or like can we be the baddies a little harder? Like, what is the deal? Like, show me this one again. Yeah, that's definitely a peace loving organization right there. There's nothing Third Reichian about that at all. It's not a.
This isn't an official Grateful Dead thing. There is no official Grateful Dead. Other than maybe the Bears and that right there. That's.
I always want to know how come they're singing blues to Allah, not to Jesus.
Well, because of Omar Khayyam. So if you look at the previous pictures where you were just at there with the skeleton, those are old. I think the last page maybe before you even got here. There's like images. Or images anyway, I don't see anymore, but there it is. See that poster right there at the top? Omar Khayyam, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which is related to drunkenness as like in the mystical sense or whatever, but maybe even just drunkenness. But if you ever read that poem, that was like major inspiration for the Grateful Dead, I guess. I don't think I'm speaking out of my ass on this. I think that that connection exists, but I have to talk to more Deadheads. I've known a few.
See the art, classic. Here we go. Omar. Oh, come on, Rolling Stone, chill out. Omar, found in the book collection 11th century poems by Persian writer. Yeah. Okay. This says Grateful Dead all over it. Yeah, we have to use this. Okay. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Seems like it tracks. Well, yeah. Is there what else? Okay, yeah. This is like now with AI. Hear me out. Hear me out. Like it's not a good thing. I'm just saying that with AI and people able to translate, that used to just be this black and white yelling guy, and all of a sudden people were never heard him before. It's like Osama bin Laden being heard in English for the first time by woke, like liberal students at their university.
I actually agree with this.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, I think we're in a dangerous place. I'm the one saying this. I'm sorry, but like this got to a point where people weren't prepared for the data. Like if you heard it all your life, like yeah.
You'll hear
like,
that with the Unabomber too, for sure.
Putin's a big one because I've had girls who be like, I just heard what Putin said. Did you hear it? It was amazing. He said amazing things. I'm like, he says a lot of things. What do you guys? He's a politician. And if you don't know that,
right?
Yeah, like people, yeah, like you can't just.
How else do you think he's going to get 80% of the vote?
What do you think is happening? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to full Muppet, but yeah. So this is what I feel like with the Adolf on Twitter and on the internet now is a bunch of people like it's 2024. It's okay to be upset at Israel, and so now you're gonna see because people were like all like, "Hey, you're a Nazi if you wore, if you drank milk." You know what I mean? Now it's at a point where they're like they don't care, and you're gonna see like real crazy stuff. Like we're about to see the craziest possible. Like
someone's gonna get called out for being a Nazi. They'd be like, "Of course, I've been drinking milk my whole life."
Like, have you not noticed? I'm walking old ladies across the street. Like, I mean, it just seems like we're getting to a date. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but the poor
I didn't
boy
like the female
sandwich thing.
Ghostbusters. Of course, I'm a Nazi.
Oh my god! Like, yeah, like that's where we're at. Like little kids. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm like a pretty open-minded guy. I'm saying this kind of seems. I'm a little intimidated by our future. These kids these days with their loud music,
and their Zima and their Pac-Man video games.
I really feel like we're almost on this weird cusp with all of the huge in like right-wing hardcore Christian influencers. Like we're only one guy running for president away from being like, yeah, maybe I don't trust the Jews so much. Like once it hits the national level and you've got like an actual political figure that almost seems like, oh, if he can say it, I can say it. But right now, every presidential candidate kisses the wall, right? But the second you've got one that doesn't kiss the wall and he's like, I don't like the wall, actually. Now there's going to be more invigoration in that.
Yeah, but there's people who are doing like the Ralph from The Simpsons, I'm helping thing, like Shmuley, Mateach, and these like people that don't see, or Ben Shapiro, who don't have any, like they have no problem with just like speaking to things as though they represent entire groups or a specific group that they're supposed to be speaking for when it comes to Orthodox Judaism. And I think most people that would listen to either of those people would have certain disagreements. I mean, Shmuley is Chabad, like that's a specific sect. He's not always distinguished, like this, making that distinction between what their kind of weird group is about. Like their leader didn't call himself the Mashiach. That came from after he died, his followers. And if
that'd be like calling yourself cool or woke, you couldn't do it. Someone else has to call you that.
It's just that issue when somebody becomes like that is really quick to be like, I speak for these people. Like I've seen like Clarence Thomas do that, or like people Jesse Jackson do that for Black community, and you're like, and then people will be like, actually, I don't agree with that, and they'll belong to the group that they're supposed to be one with or allies of, or people will. This is one of the big problems with the left, right? Is people speaking for other groups as allies, and then like a lot of those members of the group being like, wait, what did you just say on my behalf? No, I think I disagree with you there. So, I don't know.
But I think it's less about that, and it's more about someone else. It's like, hey, wait, I've had that opinion too, but I've never heard someone with any sort of stature or like political capital that they've got to burn also have that opinion. Now I feel safe to also share that. And if you mix that with the right type of rhetoric, if you get like a Bernie Sanders, it's like throws in, oh, maybe this elders of protocols of elders of Zion maybe they were onto something, and he just slips it into like a nice.
You remember that was his first drop in the polls. That was the first time that Bernie Sanders, his first run, when he had a certain degree of momentum. He had a big close in a way. I mean, what happened was he just at some point hadn't really expressed his views on Israel-Palestine in 2016, and he just said it outright, talking about Palestinian rights, and all of a sudden, like people, like Jewish American, like Israeli American, like people like in Israel and all over the place, they're like, yeah, he can say he's a Jew, but he's not really Jewish, you know, because he went against the Zionist thing before it was popular, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of things changed on October 8th. You know what I mean? Like,
do yourself a favor and never translate a Hebrew tweet from Israel. Like, not right now. Like, the kinds of things you read, they're just like, oh my God. Like, we will wipe them away from the earth, and we will salt the ground.
That's the thing, when
you're
you
like,
look
oh boy, okay.
Yeah, and then you look at like who actually owns that account, and you're like, this is you know, like this is the weird thing when I mean, you never know where something's coming from until you know.
Statism.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, less statism.
You don't know. Like the levels of propaganda are insane. And so, like, you know, like if like back in the day, like I've been a conspiracy theorist since prior to 2001, you know, and like if you go to look at something, like I look at like King Kill 33, like years ago from James Shelley Downer. What is it? Oh no, what's his?
Shelley Downer.
And yeah, and it was like I'd see things in there, and I was like, look into it, and then gain a perspective, whatever. And then it was like, you know, years go by, and I'm like, it's an area to navigate when it comes to protocols of Zion and these different ideas that people have, whatever, and you get a sense of it all, and that is a part of conspiracy, like people who get into looking into deeply into conspiracies, that come across all this stuff, and it takes a lot to like over the years like put things into perspective. And who we're talking about, the Rockefellers now, okay, that's the Rockefellers, okay, we're talking about these people over here, whatever.
There's a huge difference though between pre-2001, even if you're talking like 90s conspiracy, especially if you get like a little bit older. But there's this really strange dynamic that up until you got like William Cooper making a name for himself and Alex Jones kind of building on top of that and be like a WWF kind of thing. But in the 90s, right, it was almost impossible for you to be a conspiracy theorist. It's like making a name for themselves, especially if it's like online. Every time you look into a conspiracy theory, it's just directing you to like a book or an article or something. You do that now, and you're finding like influencers or like people that have opinions that you kind of like latch onto, and the landscape has changed entirely because of that. Because now, if someone gets into conspiracy, this sounds like hipster talk, but like the more they get into conspiracy now, it's more of like the pop culture version of the conspiracy. It's like, who are your favorite, you know, conspiracy influencers, and like what takes on these certain things. But I remember in the 90s, the conspiracy theory was just learning about Iran-Contra. It didn't even matter totally. The political just that you knew it existed. But now it's like you buy into a person. You might even care about Iran-Contra, just like a certain person has hot takes on it, and whatever their hot take is on that, you're on board because I'm into conspiracy theories because of the guy.
Because of the guy, you're totally right. Yeah, no, it's funny. Like it was years ago. I remember my rabbi was interested to see something from David Icke on the Israel-Palestine conflict, whatever. And it was like a 3-hour thing that he listened to, some recording. And he was like, I thought this was the lizard guy. He was like, I just listened to what this guy had to say. And he's like, I agreed with like 98% of it. He was like, wow, this is a conspiracy nut. He was like, he seems like he really did his homework. And this is what, you know, my rabbi is kind of scrutinizes when it comes to that subject, you know, because he's been at it for so long, you know, and so deeply. And he was just like, wow, he's like, he's got he more on point than like most people you see in the media over this stuff, you know. He's like, he's got perspective. He was like, I was waiting for the reptiles and they never showed up. I don't know.
I need to make a movie about the sexual frustrations of Oliver North. I feel like that would be, because I want people to want the Xirtus take. Also, you ever notice that you've never seen Matt Walsh and Michael Moore in the same room at the same time? I'm just saying. I don't know. Something to that. It's not like a big deal, but like just for a second, Matt Walsh, I don't know what. Maybe it's the raw milk thing. Maybe it's the anime. Maybe it's the video games. These are all things I should probably live without if I really. But the raw milk is what got me.
This can't be real. This video can't be real, is it?
Yeah, it's Michael Moore dressed as Matt Walsh. No, they're the same person, but for the left and the right. That's what I've decided. It's literally like, if you like Matt Walsh, you like your and your mom likes Michael Moore. You are the same family, bro. You are the same people.
I mean, it feels to me like the way that this is directed and the way that this ends, this sneak peek ends, is that this feels like trolling. Like this feels like they work together to troll the ideology, like her too. Does it
freaking
hurt
wish.
too? Or are they really in opposition?
Dude, like there's this one where he like goes in and he serves people like as with a mask on for COVID, like he's a server for all these white ladies talking about racism. There's one lady of color.
Didn't
But, like,
Steven Crowder do this a little bit better than him?
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people did this better than him. I don't know. Matt Walsh, I really want to love you someday maybe, but dude, you get your life together and start drinking some raw milk and just I'll stop hating on you as much.
Yeah, why was he
then.
freaking out about the raw milk thing? He's just
Because
so
he's
mad
a
at-
fascist, you know what I mean? Like he's like the same people that want to take away like I would rather let a Haitian eat Matt Walsh's cat than have raw milk prohibited. I think he's wrong.
I don't care about Haitians eating cats. I don't think we need to be torturing animals in America. If people get found torturing animals, I think it's just I'm not cool with that. You know,
No,
religious
I
issues or
like your take is way too like logical. I like the way the left is doing it. Dear racist, you eat birds too. That's where we're at with this, okay? Just because people are grilling seagulls and geese, hey buddy, like you're eating chicken, all right? So let's all sin together in Sin City. That's America, right?
No,
I remember growing up with Gummo, and Gummo told me that it was white people that were really the ones eating the cats.
Yeah, right.
Totally. Whatever.
French white people.
Who cares anyway? I'm sorry. Like, I'm just
French people of all colors probably eat cats.
You know, I mean, if you did it the right way, you know, I mean, what is the difference really? It's like people are freaking out about goats or whatever. It's like, dude, most of the world eat goats. Isn't that like one of the most eaten meats in the world?
I guess it's like different if it's like Tinkerbell or your little Skittles.
I mean, you can't even argue that it's about cuteness because
Who
cows
killed
are
my
adorable.
cat? No, but like if it's your like, let's say you live in an apartment building and your cat goes missing because they ate your cat. I think that's theft.
Then we're dealing with theft too, right?
Yeah, that's. I think you got a lot of that, but you're like, oh, the inconceivability of someone.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't want to steal your neighbor's pig and eat it either. You know what I mean? It's just.
I mean, you might. I mean, if it's. Delicious.
I mean, one might want to do that, but it's not like legal. You know.
Yeah, it's
like,
not quite.
Stole my pig. Hey, you know. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the eating geese though thing. Like, what if like soon we have geese? Like you could eat like geese tacos. Like there's like a Somali geese cart that you can eat. Like I'm for it. I want deer and geese.
I eat geese.
Yeah, it seems good.
From that we raised actually, and like we like rooster too, which is tough, you know. But the county told us we couldn't have that many chickens, and so we had to get rid of a lot of our chickens. Because our neighbor filmed us in the backyard, the last place I was living, sent it to the county. County tells us, hey, you got too many chickens. We were living in an industrial area, too. It wasn't even a residential area. There just happened to be somebody in a residence. It's just whatever,
well,
man.
You could have created some new avian flu, I guess. I don't know. The thing with California I've noticed is that there's laws against everything, but they're often decriminalized zones where everything is permitted. So it's like you could at any point be arrested. If anyone ever was like, to just if a shark, let's call a cop a shark, was to be swimming, there's always someone to eat, right? You could always, if you wanted to, arrest somebody for any number of things.
Where's the Alpines already? Come on.
The what?
In all seriousness,
oh yeah, cat. Right. We are. I'll get one up. I'm sorry.
Isn't it a legal possibility, even theoretical, that you could marry your chicken in California and then get over some loophole where they're like no longer chickens but family members?
That's virgin on the. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pretty soon. Chickens are still like of age, but California's passing laws to help that.
Lowering the age of consent for chickens.
Yeah, I think that's
the Lenny Bruce bit with a chicken in our bed. It's just like he's just talking about the differences between men and women, and he's like, men detached. He's like,
there you go.
Tell me if I'm missing something, but I saw the Lenny Bruce movie, Lenny, with Dustin Hoffman, and I hated it. It made me like.
No, it's not very good. It's not very good. No.
Okay, it wasn't just me.
Pointing from Dustin Hoffman too, and it's not like at least it's like Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey, who happens to share a birthday with Andy Kaufman. It's like it's pretty impressive. Like I don't like the movie The Doors, but Val Kilmer's portrayal of Jim Morrison is phenomenal. But like with that one, he's not selling me on being Lenny. I would much rather just listen to old Lenny Bruce stand up, honestly. So. Yeah. Well,
what do you think? We got a few more minutes. Let's talk about Lenny Bruce because I think that it's actually pretty relevant right now. We've kind of got this death of the FCC, this old people that watch television. Mark Hamill posted, "Is anyone watching television tonight?" Yeah. That's the way he asked people watching the debate. Like, what? No one's watching television. Are you high? Oh,
Right.
sorry. Like for the most part, it's gonna be like maybe a few people watch clips, maybe some people watch like some live streaming of it, and then
I
there's
just watch
like
it for the commercials.
right, there's gonna
Yeah.
be some like old people that have TVs still, but like for the most part, I mean, this is the last election I think that
Those
they're
are a
gonna
lot of the
be.
people whose votes matter are included in the people that won't open the podcast doors, podcast doors.
Yeah.
They're just stuck.
And Lenny Bruce was like, at a time everyone thinks about America. Well, no, they don't. A lot of people don't think about anything, and especially not history. And Thomas Jefferson said he'd rather think about the future than learn about history. But for a lot of Americans, they're thinking about if anyone's gonna think about the past, it's easier if you use media. You can watch a movie about the 50s. You could watch a movie made in the 50s. You could watch a documentary from the 50s. But it's never quite as good as something that you couldn't have recorded in the 50s because it was illegal. And Lenny Bruce did things constantly where he'd be arrested for indecency because he's not allowed to talk about those things, right?
Yeah,
And
it's the
that's where
context of the times, and it's the pioneering nature of it and what he was up against. It's like if a young person now watches Citizen Kane, they're not watching the same movie that people who are older would be watching because a lot of these things had never been done before. Like those low shots and the way, like things that we just are commonplace now. And you're like, well, this is who started this. So we're talking with Lenny Bruce. It's like you're talking pre-Carlin, you're talking pre all these people. He's like a sacrifice so that people could do what they were able to do later.
What's the lore on this one, Paranoid?
If you keep going, there's another image as part of this. This is the cover to this particular episode of Batman, but the image right next to it.
This guy here?
No. It was to the right of the the one.
Okay. Got to make sure my night vision gear is on. Okay, I can see him. Eliminate his advantage. Political science is on. Iran-Contra, Bohemian Grove, JFK. Sweet.
So there was at one point that DC was not a complete woke fest of DEI garbage. People were slipping in Bohemian Grove and Iran-Contra references.
They just did Joker.
Less
what is
oversight.
Joker? That's like politically, like Joker, I don't know, man. Like it's a whole other level, right? You guys saw that, right? Maybe I'm biased. I've only watched.
Bane came in, the first one to make masks cool.
What's that?
Well,
Batman's Bane is the one that made masks cool.
True. Yeah.
Well, I feel like Lenny Bruce is like the jumping off point for a lot of famous mainstream comics, but he's the comedian's comic because it's like a secret and it's things he's talking about in the 50s you couldn't hear about until the late 90s, early 2000s comics started saying those things, really. Because they got recordings. Yeah,
a lot of that, it did exist in like Tijuana Bibles and things of that nature.
Right. That's what I mean. Like the 50s weren't just like this glamorous, kinder, gentler times, but that's the image that we've presented. And I feel like that still is the illusion that's being presented by this mainstream media that I guess there have to be some people, because there's billions of people, there has to be some people watching that around the world still. It's a crazy divide between one lexicon and another, like two completely different. It's as much as the way people used to think of Russia and America different or China and America different in the 1940s or something.
Totally. Can I pitch something to you guys just because you do the things that you do? I don't know how I've seen people do this before, but I don't know how complicated it is. But I would like to take the last sequence of the third Matrix movie when there's like the last part of the final battle between Agent Smith and Neo, where Agent Smith actually enters Neo to transform him, and then it's like it's some kind of trick, and then the light bursts out. I want to make it so Agent Smith is Trump and then Neo is RFK Jr. If you could help me do that, that would be awesome.
I don't know. It wouldn't do it like AI like, but I know Superman, if he wasn't afraid of green rocks, he's pretty good at like, he's got something where he puts a face on a thing and it looks kind of like
right, it's kind of silly. Yeah. It'd be cool if it was like real, more like AI realistic looking, but I can understand that. Or you could just write Maha on fucking on
do face
Neo
tracking
and write MAGA on Agent Smith or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
Because that transmutative process of the two things that are in opposition, like literally like, alchemically transforming the thing, I'm like, that's pretty far out visual, Like people would get the communication. I'm just putting it out there. If you guys want to help me out with that, that'd be pretty cool.
I think the debate must be starting now, so we're gonna like wrap it up. I just want to point out that you have this post here, and you guys can go to David Plate's page. You can check out Paranoid American as well.
I did want to point out one other thing too, not a promo thing, but I saw the Melania Trump video that came out today, and I was convinced it was AI. Like I was just like, oh, this isn't even good. Like the face is all breaking apart. And then I went and I saw, oh, this is actually like on all the news stations. I guess this is not AI or this is the AI that we're allowed to like perpetrate.
This is like this new black and white thing. This one.
Well, no. She came out and she was basically saying like, there's something fishy about this attempt on my husband's life. Why didn't they? Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, that looks really glossy and just whoa.
It looks like AI, but she kind of looks like AI in person, I've been told.
Yeah, bro. AI Andreas. You know what I mean?
I think she might actually just be a walking hologram, and even people who meet her in person can't even tell at this point. I don't know.
All right, make sure you guys go to MK Ultrasound, check out David's sync work. We'll be back next week, and have a great night. Enjoy the debate. Thanks for being here. Ciao.